It's that time of the day, thank goodness. Yes, we've rolled out the barrel and it's time for Talking Pints. And I'm joined tonight by somebody that I've known for, goodness me, I think a quarter of a century. He's written so much rubbish about me, it's almost not true. But he's occasionally been complimentary as well. And he really is. He's at the heart of all Westminster gossip, so you never know what we're going to find out in the course of the next 12 or 13 minutes. I'm delighted to welcome onto Talking Pints Andrew Pierce of Her Majesty's Daily Mail.
Very glad to be here.
Welcome to the programme.
I'm not drinking pints because a pint of vodka would knock me out.
No, it would not, absolutely. Andrew, long-time journalist.
Yeah.
You've been doing this a very, very
43 years. I was
time.
Thinking about it on my way here.
And it's interesting, you know, you and I have had our agreements and disagreements down the years, and that's naturally the way it is between politicians and journalists. Yeah. But ultimately, you're really a working-class Tory, aren't you?
I am. I was completely hooked by Mrs Thatcher as a teenager growing up in Swindon. My father worked on the assembly line of British Leyland. I say he worked on the assembly line. He was often on strike because of the way that the unions had a grip. And it was always a show of hands, a dispute. And Dad would come home and explain to Mum he was on strike again because the show of hands. And he'd say, "I'm telling you what, love, we all voted to stay at work." But the shop steward would say, "Right, we're out." And I kept saying to my parents, this woman with a screechy voice called Margaret Thatcher, the leader of the opposition, was pledging to bring in secret ballots before industrial action. And I said to my parents, you should vote for her. This is something that will help this family, help this town. I voted for her in the 1979 general election. I was still doing my A-levels. My brother was so furious, because he was looking over my shoulder, denounced me all the way home. I was a class war traitor, and I stuck with Thatcher right to the end. And I'm pretty sure, Nigel, in the 1983 election, my parents also abandoned the Labour Party.
Now, they were your adopted parents, weren't they?
Yeah.
But clearly gave you a good start in life.
Yeah, I was in a children's home for 2.5 years in Cheltenham, in Gloucestershire. It was Catholic, run by the nuns. I'm sure they were delightful. And Mum and Dad had 3 children, and they wanted a 4th. They wanted another boy, and the priest must have said in a sermon, "There's lots of kids who need a home." Yeah. And this little fat lad, which was me, had been languishing there for 2.5 years.
Long time, isn't it?
It was a long time.
Do you remember all this?
No, I don't. But I always knew I was adopted. My mum and dad told me that right from the beginning. And people often ask me, did your siblings resent you? Shirley, Susan and Chris, they never did. They embraced me. They might have been a bit cross when I arrived, but I never felt anything other than an integral part of that family. We don't look the same, though, it has to be said. They're quite large and blonde, and I'm quite slim and dark.
And you, from that background, why journalism?
You know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My siblings would probably admit that I was probably better at school than they were, but I had the gift of the gab. We had a school newspaper which I wrote, and the English teacher kept accusing me of plagiarism, a word I had to look up, a word we all know a lot about now.
Probably right, though, wasn't he?
No, absolutely not true. And I was writing football reports and all sorts of things, and she said, you should really think about being a journalist. She said, because you've got a great way with words, and I've always liked writing, and I always had my nose in a book when I was growing up, much more than most other children. I didn't want to play football, didn't want to do sport. And I got the job, ironically, Nigel, the first and only newspaper interview I got was on the Gloucestershire Echo in Cheltenham, which is where the orphanage was, which is where I spent the first couple of years of my life, which was a coincidence.
Have you, a lot of people who are adopted in later life try and retrace their birth mother, all of that. Is that a journey that you've been on?
No, you always think about it, but my mum and dad were so wonderful. Yeah. I love them to bits, and I'd have thought, I mean, Dad's been dead for 20 years, with Mum been dead for 5 or 6 years. I think they'd have said they'd supported it, and they would have, but I think it would have hurt them, because they'd have felt they hadn't given me quite enough, and they gave me so much love. And when you consider we were a pretty poor family on a council estate in Swindon, there wasn't much money, and yet they still brought this mouth into the house to feed, and they say we all got treated the same. So I think they gave me more than I could have expected. So that's why I thought, I'm not going to do it. I
remember years ago, an event we were at, a weekend event we were at, and you and I spoke, and I realised that we agreed a lot on policy, direction, the way we felt about the country, European Union, borders, all those things. I mean, Andrew, you know, you're there, you're writing about current affairs, you're writing about the royal family, you're writing about the shenanigans that go on in Westminster. Is this a Conservative Party?
This is the least Conservative Party leadership that I've ever written about. And I started working in the Parliament in 1989. It was at the wrong end of the Thatcher years. But what a Tory she was. John Major, well, wasn't much of a Tory, was he?
Bit wet.
Bit poor, yeah, and boring and irritating and not half as nice as people think he was, actually. You know, he used to shout, holler a lot at his staff. David Cameron was more at home in a coalition with the Liberals than he was with his own party. William Hague was a Tory for a couple
Briefly.
of years. Yeah, and look at him now.
Now sold out.
Completely. And I was never ever completely convinced about Boris Johnson's commitment to conservatism.
Or Brexit?
Well, I'm glad he was committed to that, because
Yes,
with
so
you,
he
delivered it.
So am I.
It wouldn't happen without him.
Did he believe in it?
Who knows? Because we know that he wrote a 2,000-word article on one hand and 2,000 on the other, and look, he's an opportunistic person, he's an ambitious person. He had a very, very influential, clever wife, Marina, a QC, who wrote a very powerful piece in The Spectator putting the arguments of Brexit better than Boris ever did.
Very powerful.
And we got there in the end. But I remember when Boris was Mayor of London, I was horrified that a Conservative Mayor of London wanted to give an amnesty to all illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
I want you to sort it out.
It's not just me bashing Boris on this show, as some of you accuse me of. It's true, isn't it?
Look, I like him. He's engaging, and he got a fantastic majority for the Tories to get Brexit
Which
done.
he hasn't used.
Well, he got it done in the sense that the deal he got to get us out of the EU was a lot better than others.
A bit.
It was a lot better than Theresa May's.
Yeah, it was a bit better.
And he had David Frost by his side, and I think David Frost, I hear rumours all the time, he was Lord Frost, he was Brexit minister. I think there's a chance, come the next general election, David Frost will be a member of the House of Commons.
Well, he can renounce the peerage. He sat in that very chair a couple of weeks ago. I was impressed by him.
He's a proper Tory.
Andrew, let's be honest, they're going to get smashed at the next election, aren't they?
Do you know what might save them? I was talking to somebody on the Labour side today, and they said, you lot obsess about Boris and the Tory Party. You're missing something here. You do not understand the level of concern about Keir Starmer on the Labour benches. He's a dud. He's useless. He's boring. Did you see last week at Prime Minister's Question Time? Now, I know it's just a bit of theatre.
What was he doing going on those questions?
Six
questions. It was an open goal.
Open goal. Even I could have put it in the net, and I can't play. If I was kicking a football, I'd be with my left foot. He didn't even mention the confidence vote. He's uncomfortable in politics. He's uncomfortable as leader of the opposition. He should be brilliant because he's meant to be a clever lawyer.
But maybe boring is attractive after a period of turmoil.
Well, yeah, but he's got to believe in something too, and he doesn't believe in anything either.
No, rather like Boris.
And if Boris was to topple, and I think it's 50-50, maybe 55-45 that he survives, the Tories might go for something really
we're back
boring.
to 2010, Andrew. We're back to 3 Social Democrat passes.
Well, and it could be something like Ben Wallace, Defence Secretary,
Could be.
had a good war. But you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
You've got money on him. I've got money on him. You've probably got more money than me. Nadeem Zahawi, who I've known since he's set up...
A businessman,
set
an outsider,
up very successful business
and Priti Patel, who would believe in many things you believe in.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about why Nadeem Zahawi would be quite clever. Look, the Tories, the first 2 women Prime Ministers, well, the first great woman Prime Minister in Mrs Thatcher, Theresa May.
And then the worst ever.
Ever. And then they would have the first non-white Tory leader in Nadeem Zahawi. What would that say to the Labour Party with all their talk about inclusivity and
why do we look at
diversity?
people like this?
Because that people will make a virtue of it.
But why don't we just look at people as whether they're capable and honest and decent?
I don't think of Nadeem as dark.
I couldn't care less, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm not interested whether people are black or white or gay. I couldn't care less.
I got into big trouble on Twitter, and The Guardian attacked me because I was being attacked on my LBC show. People say, you just don't like the Duchess of Sussex, what's her name, Meghan Markle, because she's black. And I said, can I just tell you something? When I don't see Meghan Markle, I don't see a black woman. No. I don't see a woman of colour. I see an intensely irritating American third-rate actress who's doing everything she can to wreck the royal family. I was a racist.
Yeah, I
was trending on social media.
So how do you cope with all of this when you're doing your regular newspaper reviews, this double act that's been going on for a decade or more?
Yeah, with Kevin Maguire.
With Kevin Maguire.
Yeah, I've known him.
Who was a Republican.
He is.
Can be quite humorless at times.
Often, as is often the case with the left.
Full of venom.
Yeah.
Loathes people. How does this double act work? Are you friends off screen?
We're mates. Difference, I think. We're mates.
Yeah.
He's been to my house for dinner. Needless to say, I've not been to his house for dinner because he hasn't invited me back. He did want to see my Margaret Thatcher shrine, because in my home, the study is a shrine to Margaret Thatcher. There is a life-size cutout of the Iron Lady, photographs of me with her, books, and so just before midnight, Kevin went in there and we locked him in. And then we started banging on the door 10 minutes later saying, the ghost of Mrs Thatcher will be with you in 10 minutes. He was banging on that door to come out.
You should have left him there.
Should have left him
there. Should have left him
I thought he might attack the statue, my cutout of the Iron Lady.
A thought.
Yeah.
Big court case today, not just Rwanda. Aaron Banks, who backed me and funded me for years.
Great man.
A businessman who came in very late to the process, thought Brexit mattered, put millions of pounds of his own money into it. Attacked and accused by The Guardian, or one particular journalist on The Guardian, non-stop, that he was funded by Russia, covert secret links. By implication, I was part of that. I even had Hillary Clinton saying I was funded by the Kremlin. I had hate mobs as a result of it. Aaron suffered financially, business-wise as a result of it. Court judgment today that says nothing The Guardian read about Banks was true. It was all wrong. The Russia hoax wasn't true. And yet, even though Banks was defamed, and the judge accepts that, it's OK for a journalist to write things if they're not true, if they believe them to be in the public interest. Now, I wouldn't for a moment want to shut you down as a journalist from writing things that you have reason through research to believe to be true. Where the hell does this judgment leave us? Is this Blair's legacy to us?
It is. It's a perverse ruling, and it's all to do with that wretched Human Rights Act, which empowered judges to make laws.
Do you mean the Human Rights Act that my lawyer guest earlier thought was so marvellous?
Yes, exactly that one. It empowered judges to make laws. So we've got a privacy law in this country. Parliament never passed a privacy law in this country, ever, but the judges just put it together and put it together. But this is the most extraordinary interpretation. So the story was wrong. It defamed Aaron Banks. It was untrue. You could say it was a lie even. And yet, she won. It's extraordinary. And it's going to be very expensive for Aaron Banks. And if he appeals, even more expensive.
He's going to appeal.
Well,
yeah.
People should crowdfund for him, because they crowdfunded for The Guardian, and people should crowd. I know he's a
I was
wealthy
hoping
man.
He'd win, Andrew.
Yeah.
I was hoping he'd win, because I'll be honest with you, I was going to launch a whole series of lawsuits off the back of it to demand apologies for much of what was said. Fair, free comment is one thing. Right. Actually being told that you're pawns of the Russian state and Putin when there's not a scintilla of truth in it is absolutely shocking.
I think it's wicked, actually, because particularly when we consider where we are with Russia today, Russia with waging an illegal war in Ukraine, this is going to increase the hatred of Aaron Banks even more, who, of course, perversely is married to a very nice Russian woman.
I know.
There are already people saying she's a Russian spy.
Yeah.
So it's a very grim day, and it's the judges, yet again, who are making law. Why is Priti Patel's law on Rwanda being challenged in the courts? Now, she's won twice, brilliant, and it'll go to the Supreme Court again. But can't governments make laws anymore?
When you look forward, Andrew, do you still feel, this final thought, bit of philosophy from Andrew Pierce, the gossip monger goes philosopher. Do you feel optimistic for the future of our country?
Not in the short term, no. I think we're going to have a very bumpy economic period. Boris, I don't know what's going to happen post-Boris. I think, very gloomy for a couple of years, but we've got to try and be upbeat. But no, I don't feel it's very good, and I can't stand the way the judges are taking over.
It's enough to send you to drink. Andrew Pierce, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.